This is my event center. It's one of my many assets. It's an asset because it makes me money. Carson, what do you got here?
Well, this is one of the things I own, so it's an asset, right?
Well, let me ask you, does it make you money?
No.
Does it go up in value?
No, it's lost money since I bought it.
So it's not an asset, it's
actually a liability.
This is a liability, that's an asset, but what is your home? My name is Kris Krohn, the #1 single family real estate investor.
And I'm Carson Tejan, and for the next year of my life, I'm gonna be Kris's apprentice.
And today we're talking about your primary residence and whether or not it can kickstart your real estate investing journey. So today's video is talking about using your primary residence to kickstart your real estate investing journey. And there's a name for that. It's called house hacking. It's how I got started. I literally bought my own primary residence, very strategic, and then I ended up using it to buy my next houses. And to make today extra fun, let's not just talk about it, we're actually gonna do it, because at the end of the video, I'm gonna challenge Carson to actually make it happen.
Are you asking me to accept a challenge when I don't really know what it is?
100%.
Okay, that makes me a little nervous.
So let's start off with why we're even talking about your primary residence in the first place. Well, just so you know, when you become a real estate investor and you want to buy an investment property, you usually have to put a 20% down payment. And the national median in the country right now is like $430,000. And so even if you're in a market where it's less than that, like let's call it a $300,000 home, 20% on $300,000 is $60,000. Most people don't have $60,000 to put down on their first home, which is why the rules are different for a primary residence, a home that you live in, versus an investment property, a non-owner occupied property.
Okay, Kris, so the only thing the bank cares about is whether or not you live in the home.
That's right. If you're going to occupy it, it's considered a primary residence. And if you're not going to live in it, it's an investment property. And the reason why it's a really big deal, Carson, is because if you tell them that you're going to buy the home and live in it yourself, the bank will say, well, you don't need a 20% down payment. You might only need a 3% down payment. And 3% on $300,000 is $9,000, not $60,000. So it's a really big deal to be able to get a primary residence that you live in with a small down payment and generally a lower interest rate. The moment you want to buy an investment property, you got to put 20% down, and usually they're going to charge you a 0.5% to 1% higher interest rate because they deem that as a higher risk. After all, it's not a home you're living in. You're going to rent it likely to other people. And as a result, what if they don't pay their rents? And what if the mortgage doesn't get paid? And so the bank's going to charge you a premium on that interest rate.
Okay, Kris, so if I'm understanding this right, your primary residence would be a liability though, because you're paying for it, whereas an investment property would be an asset because it pays you?
So it's kind of a complicated answer because the truth is, when you buy a primary residence, over time it's going to go up in value. We would call that an asset, but does it actually make you money? It's not paying you, right? Because you're living in it and you have to pay for it. And from that point of view, it is a liability. The moment you go from a primary residence, and let's say you buy your first investment property, the investment property is most definitely an asset for a number of reasons. One is you're gonna rent it out to someone else and you're gonna ask them to pay you rent. That money is used to pay the mortgage, and then there's leftover money if you do it correctly, and that's called a positive cash flow. So now it's definitely an asset because my investment property is making me money, but also like your primary residence, both are going up in value. Both of them provide tax benefits.
So then, Kris, the question is, how does your primary residence help you buy the investment property?
Well, this is where we get into house hacking 101. You see, I got into a primary residence with a very small amount of money, a 3% down payment. And let's say I bought it below market, or I allowed a little bit of time to pass and the property went up in value. Nationwide, over the last 65 years, the average house in America goes up 4.65% every year, which based on the national median means that your house could be going up $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000 every single year.
Okay, Kris, but that means that you have to wait 3 to 5 years for your home to appreciate before you can really start your portfolio growing again.
Not so. When you become a real estate investor, even if you just own a primary residence, a whole new world of opportunities open up to you. For example, let's just say you have some rooms that you're not using. You could rent those out. You could technically move out of the house and have a family rent the entire house from you. And a third option, technically after you've been in the house for 12 months, you could do it again. As in, you could qualify all over again with a 3% down payment, move into another house, and just let the first house be an investment property now, and now you have both homes appreciating, and you didn't even need a 20% down payment on an investment property yet. You have so many options out there, but let me share with you what I did when I bought my first house. I was looking for a house that I knew in the future would make a great investment property. So I ended up buying an older home. It was built in the 40s and it had a lot of problems that needed to be fixed up. But I ended up buying the house $40,000 below the market. What made this house such a win for me is that it had a basement apartment. So it meant that if I bought this primary residence, my wife and I could live in the upstairs, we could fix it up. And it turns out that after we bought the house and rented out the basement, that it covered the vast majority of our mortgage, which meant my wife and I were pretty much living for free in the larger upstairs 3-bedroom portion of the house. Now, if you want a house hack and buy a primary residence that will help you build a real estate investment portfolio, there's 3 things that you really need to keep in mind. The first one is location. In real estate, we love to say location, location, location. You're looking for a house in an area where people are looking to rent. And yeah, they're gonna look for attractive things like good school districts and how close are you to shopping areas, but you really wanna check into your city's code to make sure that you're allowed to rent this home. I had to check with my own local city on my first house to make sure that I could live upstairs and then rent the basement to an unrelated party. The second thing you're looking for is affordability. You do not want to max your financial situation out and buy as much house as possible because as an investor, you want to qualify for another house again. In the qualification process, they're going to talk about DTI, debt to income ratio, and they're going to reveal how much house you can buy to max. Stay as far below that number as you possibly can because it will help you qualify for your next house. This is not the time for your dream house. This is not the time for buying the nicest house possible. This is an investment strategy. I'm buying a house knowing that in a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 or 3 years from now, it's being turned into a rental. And the third thing that you're looking for is what's called value add opportunities. In other words, if I put some money into the house, can it actually make me more money? For example, if I bought a house and I rented out the basement and I fixed it up and I turned it into a rental, that will increase the value of the house. If you bought a duplex or a triplex and lived in one unit and rented out the other ones, you could fix them up a little nicer, you could raise the rents, and you could make more money and drive the value of your real estate up. You might find a 2-bedroom, 1-bath and find out it has a large office that you can convert into a bedroom, and when it goes from a 2-bedroom, 1-bath to a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, that value might jump up another $30,000. So always look for a value add. Carson, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Kris, but like I'm looking at these and I'm like, man, nobody actually does this stuff.
So there's definitely people out there that are doing this, but the vast majority can't do this because there's 3 major mistakes that they've made. The first mistake is they become emotional. And the problem with that is they lose sight of the original goal of, hey, I'm trying to buy an investment property that I can live in for a little bit and literally leverage eventually into more properties. And if they get too emotionally caught up, they may end up buying the wrong house, the wrong product. The second mistake that people make is they over-leverage themselves. So now they're emotionally compromised, and then they start thinking, well, what can I buy? What can I afford? Oh my gosh, this is such a nice part of town. I didn't think I'd be able to get here for maybe another 5 or 10 years, but I found kind of a deal that I'm excited about. Well, now I'm emotional, and now I'm going down luxury road, which is I'm imagining my friends and family coming over and the parties that we can throw and the big game, and all of a sudden, I'm super compromised and I'm buying more than I should. And the third mistake is we're not thinking ahead. We're not thinking about our future down the road. We're thinking immediate gratification. What can I have right now in my life? And so if I get emotional and I get excited and I buy something newer and I buy more than I should and I can justify it, well, you may find yourself living in a beautiful home, but guess what? A year from now or 2 years from now, when the next plan was to take some equity out of it or when it was to move, maybe the plan isn't happening anymore.
Okay, Kris, so I bought the right primary residence, and then the next step is to find a way to kind of roll it forward.
Listen up, my young apprentice. There are 3 ways of getting equity out of the home and putting it into your next deal. The first one is you can get what's called a HELOC, or a home equity line of credit. It's where you live in the house and you go to the bank and the bank says, wow, your house is worth X, you only owe Y. We're gonna give you a portion of that on a revolving line of credit, much like a credit card. So all of a sudden it's like, wow, I got my home equity line of credit and now I can use that money to buy another property. A second option is what's called a cash out refinance. It's where you say, I want to restructure the mortgage. In other words, I want to increase my mortgage and I want you to give me cash. The third option is sell the house. Literally, if you sell it and then you get a pile of cash, you can also use that to put it into your next property. Altogether, this is what is called equity laddering. You're basically saying, I started with one house and I'm finding some way to pull money out of it to put it in a second. And now let's say I still have 2 houses and then I'm starting to pull the equity out of both of them to buy 3 houses, 4 houses, 5 houses. You do this for a long enough period of time and then you have 10 houses, you have 20 houses, you have 30 houses. I had 25 properties by the time I was 26 years old. My net worth was $1.6 million, and all the positive cash flow on all those homes paid me $25,000 a month. And it meant that when I graduated college, I didn't have to get a job because my real estate was working for me, but I didn't have to work for it. By the way, I documented my entire house hacking journey of starting from nothing and building that portfolio in a book that I wrote, The Straight Path to Real Estate Wealth. And if you click the link below, get a copy of the book. I'll show you step by step how you can do it too. Let me show you how powerful this can be with an illustration. Let's say that you end up buying this house and let's say it's worth $300,000. This single family home, you're gonna live in it. And so the bank says, sure, you qualify to buy this as a primary residence. Let's use an FHA loan. That's a government loan that only requires 3.5% down payment, which in this case would be $10,500. By the way, $10,000 in Benjamins looks like that. Let's just say you're on a slow track and you're not trying to leverage real estate to become financially free really quick, and so 5 years passes and you find out that the home has appreciated to $375,000, but your mortgage is now paid down to $260,000. Well, if the house is worth $375,000 and you only owe $260,000, the difference is $115,000. So you go to the bank and they approve you for a $90,000 home equity line of credit. And let's say that you take that money and you say, I'm going to use that as a 20% down payment on this investment property. Well, essentially, the equity in the first house is now buying the second house. Let's say that your investment property is rented out for $2,000 a month, but your mortgage is only $1,500 a month, so you're making $500 a month of positive cash flow. You decide to do another 3% down payment on a third property that you're gonna move into, and your original primary residence is now also rented out, giving you an additional $500 a month. So check it out. This investment property is paying me $500 every single month. My original primary residence is paying me $500 every month for a total of $1,000. And let's just say that on that primary residence that I buy, that I'm able to rent out the basement and it covers half of my mortgage. But my cash flow from the other 2 homes pays for the rest of my mortgage. I'm essentially living for free, but I've got 3 homes that are now appreciating in value. Let a few more years go by and they appreciate collectively several $100,000. And now you can start seeing how 3 homes can become 10 homes, become more homes, and ultimately you achieve this game of financial freedom. And it all started with the house hack of a 3 or 3.5% down payment on a primary residence. So how much sense does this make?
Oh, it makes a ton of sense. Honestly, Kris, when I bought my first house, it was sort of on faith. I was like, Kris had a basement apartment and he did all this stuff, so I'm gonna try and do it too, but I didn't understand like the whole picture of equity laddering and all of this and how it's grown. It's really cool stuff, and a lot of people out there don't think you can get into a home now, but if you do it right, it really works.
Well, here's my question. Are you ready for challenge time?
Oh, shiz. Is that where we're going next?
Here's the challenge. I want camera to roll. I want you to go to your first property. I want you to reveal all the numbers. I want you to show you how much equity came out, and I want you to show us where you put it and how your portfolio is performing today.
Okay. Yep, we can do that.
Challenge accepted?
Challenge accepted.
Let's go. All right, so I've got Carson teed up for the house hack challenge, and I'm a little bit nervous. Like on the very first house, I know he nailed it because I was there every step of the way. But since then, he's been building his portfolio, and currently he's even building a $1.3 million house that he's gonna live in. I don't know if he's emotional about it, if he's over leveraged, but I'm seriously concerned. Let's find out. Click right here, watch this video, let's see how he did.